Hey guys, and welcome. I'm Alex, and I look after mobile here at Unflow. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through how you can set up an experiment in Unflow to show a piece of content to a user, and then play around with what it looks like and see if you can make a more successful result out of it. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to focus on quite a common use case, which is you've launched a brand new feature in your app, and you want to show people kind of like a pop-up, which lets them know, hey, we have this new feature, with like a CTA to take them straight to it. And the way we're going to do that is we're actually going to use our companion app Mirror. And if you don't know what this is, I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough now. Mirror is an app that lets you scan the QR code on your dashboard to see your content in our app. So this means you can preview things outside of your own app. You can play around. You can do some cool stuff. We'll show you in a sec. But what the important part is that you can see your content straight away. So I can see my mock story that I have set up here, and I can test that things are coming through nicely. Now, the cool parts are that you can add a manual screen here, so you can just get any of these screens to show up by pressing a button rather than relying on whatever automation settings you have. But you can also send events. So in this case, I want to be able to test the flow of showing this new feature to someone. So I want to make sure that the user's opened the home page, then they open the audio page, and then I want to make sure that they haven't opened the audio spaces. Now, the way we do this is we add an event trigger in here, and we can just give it any name we want, and then the key, which will show up on the dashboard. We can also add some more advanced metadata if we want. So, for example, all my events were opened audio page, opened audio spaces, and so on. Some people prefer to have one event, which is just opened page, and then the page type is metadata. That's fine too. I just find it a bit easier to work with simple, discrete events like this. So you can add events like this in Mirror, and you can send them manually, and then this way you can emulate people going through that flow. So in this case, I have these 3 events, and I've sent each one of these at least once from here, just to make sure that the dashboard is aware of them. Now, I have these 3 events, and what I want to do is build my flow out with those. And we're going to do that straight on the dashboard. Now, because this is such a common use case, Unflow has basically a pre-made screen for us. All we're going to have to do is change some copy, maybe change some images. So if I go to create content, gallery, and product update, I'm going to get taken to a ready-made screen that I think is pretty good for this use case. We can see we've got 3 pages. Each one has a different little doodle, a nice background, and some nice content too. And again, in your app, you'd want to change this to whatever feature you're promoting. You might want to change these doodles, and there's plenty of these you can grab from the internet. There's loads of libraries you can use. And we have these nice backgrounds too, which you could leave these alone if you want. These will animate really nicely on the device, or you could do something completely custom or use one of the pretty made ones or something. But the important part is that we have our content, and it's ready to go and display in just one click and maybe a bit of copy editing. Now, we want to make sure that this shows to people at the right time. So we're going to go to delivery. We're going to go to show based on user behavior. We'll get a little note here telling us this will only show once, so this is something to remember. This screen won't show over and over again. So if you set it up to show whenever people go to the audio page, they will only see it once on the audio page. So we're going to set that up. So I'm going to do add event. I'm going to do audio page. So I can see that when we've opened the audio page. And I want to filter this. So I want to make sure it only shows when they've opened the audio page, but I only want it to show if they haven't already made a space. So if I go into my spaces here, opened audio space, I want to say this has happened less than, let's say, 3 times. Now, the reason I set it to 3 is 2. First of all, because I'm testing, I've probably sent this event a few times. So realistically, I've probably hit more than 1 time. So I need to give myself some wiggle room. Second of all, in the real world, sometimes you might want to give a little bit of wiggle room so that people who've stumbled on the feature by accident before you set this content live, or maybe they just don't really know what they're doing, they still get this pop-up kind of giving them an intro to the feature. So it can be quite useful. So what I have is I said, when they've opened their audio spaces less than 3 times, and then they open the audio page, we will see this screen. Now, I think this screen is pretty good, and we've used this in quite a lot of our new features. However, I shouldn't presume it's good. I need to be able to validate that it's good. So what I'm going to do is introduce a split test. I'm going to change this content up a bit with a different example and see what I can do. So I want to make sure that whatever I'm putting in front of these users is kind of pushing them to use this new feature, and I can validate that it's actually working too. So the way we do it in Unflow is really easy. You hit try it up here, and you get a second split test. Now you can see we have these 2 screens. Right now they're identical, but we're about to change that. So my hypothesis is that I think this screen is great, but I think when you show a pop-up to a user with like these 3 different screens and they see this paginated, I might think, I'm just not gonna read all that. So I'm gonna make a screen that just has one of those. So I'm gonna delete 2 of the pages, like so. and I'm just going to have my one. Now, I don't think this copy is very strong on its own. I think it's great as an intro, but I really think this copy on my last page, which is kind of a little bit cheekier, is great. So what I'm going to do is copy that over, make sure it's all aligned nicely. So now I have my nice copy that I quite like. I have my introducing audio rooms and my standard done button. So I have two completely different screens that I could change. I could change these further. This could have a completely different background, light mode, dark mode, and so on. But for now, I'm kind of keeping it simple. I'm just cutting down to one page, and I'm going to have a nicer copy. Now, I want to be able to measure the success, which again, really easy. We just choose an event. So in this case, I want to make sure that they've opened audio spaces. So what I'm going to check is, after the screen's gone away, have they then gone and opened an audio space? That's how we're going to measure our success. Now, all I have to do here, I don't have to get a developer involved or anything. All I do is start this test. Now, these screens are live. If we remember, I set it so that when I've opened the audio page, and I've opened audio spaces less than 3 times, this will trigger. So if I go in my app, and I open audio page, I'm going to get my content. Now you can see this time, I got the single page, which I quite like. I quite like the single page. If I was on a new page and I got shown this, I'd be pretty happy with that. Now, you might run this and get the other one. You don't know. But what we're going to do now, just to show how the results work, is I'm going to trigger opened audio spaces. Now, when I go back to my dashboard and hit Results tab, I can see that one person opened it, one person tapped it, and one person dismissed it. Now, as the results start to come in, you'll see that this number on the end increments, and you'll see your success metrics start to show. Obviously, there's only one result now, so it's not showing just yet, but you'll start to see this go. Now, over time, what you're going to see is you're going to see trends. So in this case, I've only opened it one time, but I think that over time, what I'll see is that this is going to get better. So if we had this kind of running for a month or so, obviously you want to run it for longer the less users you have, I'm going to see some trends, and I'm going to pick one that I prefer. Now, we have a tool to do this, which makes it really easy to do. Once you've finished your test, you can end your test and choose, do you want to keep one or the other, or do you just want to pause the screen entirely? So it's important to remember that you might have an experiment where both screens don't really perform very well, and you want to say, look, this whole thing's a bust, let's stop it. But in this case, I think my variant B worked really well, so I'm just going to keep variant B. Then I go to my content, and that's all I have, my variant B, and that will keep showing to users, so that screen is still live. And in future, people will only see this one. So it's a really seamless way to experiment without having to get developers involved, and you can play around a lot with your content because these screens are quite flexible. And if you do at any point pause the test and resume it, you'll get a whole new section here. So you can see here, I've got my content, and I've got my open, tapped, and dismissed. So I can see that I have my experiment in the past, and I get this history building up. So if I start messing around with this more and more, then I'll see a big list of history, and I can sort of see how things went over time. You know, it's really important to experiment. So the more you mess around with this stuff, the more you might find out. So it's always worth having a go. And that's all there is from us today. That's all you need to run an experiment. That's how you use Miro to test these things. If you ever need to reset your Miro environment, you can obviously feel free to delete it and start again. Play around with the events and send different test events. It's all up to you. But yeah, if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Check out the Unflow website for some more demos. And thanks for watching.